I've got a secret to tell you about home education in the UK. Everyone's at it. Okay, maybe not everyone, but probably a lot more people than you would think. Before I started home educating, I didn't know anyone who was doing this. I didn't even really know it was even a thing before about a year or so before my twins were due to start school. And then I turned up at a home ed park meetup one day to meet loads of families there, all home educating their children for varying degrees of time. The UK government website states that, hold on, there were 116,300 children identified as home educated at some point in the 2021-2022 academic year. I like to think of it as some kind of underworld community of people that you don't know exists until you become a part of the community yourself. Now, obviously, the whole concept of homeschooling, home education, has picked up more into the collective consciousness since the pandemic, where many people were forced into the homeschooling situation. But it's hard to really get your head around until you get out there in the real world and meet with other home educating families and realise that actually they're just families like you and I wanting the best for their kids. Now, I'll let you in on another little secret if you're not already part of a home ed community, that the best way to reach these fellow home educators is via Facebook. Now, even if you are anti-Facebook, don't have one for yourself at the moment, I would highly recommend you getting one. And I know there are many home educators who choose not to have a personal Facebook, but do so for the home education side. But this really is the place or the easiest place to find other home educating families, find out where your local park meetups are happening, what workshops are going on, any events that are being organised. They all tend to happen on Facebook. And you will discover that there are so many wonderful, brilliant, helpful home educating families out there, likely almost on your doorstep or not too far away from you, that you never knew existed. So my name's Catherine. I am mum of a home educating family here in the UK. I have twins who are 5.5 and their little brother who is almost 3. My eldest children would have just finished year R, which I believe is equivalent to pre-K in the US. These are all very general points about home ed, but if you are looking for some more specific information about older children, I've been really loving the channels Yes You Can Home Educate and Adventure All the Way, which both have done videos about home education in respect to older school-age children, and I will link them in the description below so you can go and check them out after you finish watching this video. Like I said in my 5 reasons why I'm choosing to home educate my children video, most families who home educate will be quizzed from strangers to family members alike on why they have chosen to home educate their children, whereas people who are sending their children to school almost never get asked why they have made the decision to send their kids to school. Whereas in my eyes, they're actually the ones that are making a bigger decision, because home education is actually the default, not sending your kids to school. Home education is what you have been doing every day up until your child reached compulsory school age, or even younger than that. To expand further, what I mean by that is that essentially all children are home educated until you make the decision to fill out a form choosing a school for your child to attend. If you don't fill out those forms, then you have a home educated child. That is the default. And I think that's just really something interesting to ponder on. And I would be doing disservice if I didn't mention that, because that is the default. If you don't send your children to school, if you don't make that decision, then it is your responsibility to provide your child with a full-time suitable education from day one. And that kind of leads on to my next point, that in the UK we don't call it homeschooling, we call it home education, and there's a reason why that's important. Now, there are varying degrees of pedantry over this, and if you are part of any of the UK home education Facebook groups, you will have seen numerous times in comments people correcting posters about the use of the term homeschooling over home education, and to the lesser degree some people complaining that people are too pedantic about the use of the term, and actually the essential essentially mean the same thing, and we shouldn't get so caught up on words. But words do matter. They have importance, and the importance here I think is mostly to do with the fact that we are making the distinction that if you choose not to send your children to school, it does not mean you have to do school at home. During the pandemic, many families, or all families with children in school, did school at home. They homeschooled. They were sent work by teachers, expected to complete certain tasks by a certain time, follow a schedule, etc. School at home. And if you are already a home educator, there is no doubt that at some point you've probably had someone say to you, "Oh, I don't know how you do it. I had to homeschool my kids during the pandemic and it was awful. I just couldn't do it. I don't know how you do it full time." Now, my kids weren't actually in school during the pandemic anyway. They weren't school age. But yes, it does sound like it was awful. I wouldn't want to do that. And no, that's not what we are doing. That's not what home education is. And I think it's a difficult distinction to make for those of us home educating parents who went through the school system ourselves, because we've spent our whole lives being told that to receive an education you have to go to school. That's what the whole of society has been told for most of their lives. You have to go to school, you have to work through textbooks, you have to pass exams. That's how you become educated. No. And I do think a way to constantly remind ourselves of that is to remove the word school from our vocabulary completely. So I do support the use of the word home education, and I appreciate there's many people who are new to home education who haven't come across that term and will use the term homeschooling. Let's not be down on them. Let's explain the difference. To be honest, I'd probably even remove the word home from the whole situation, because like I said in my things we don't do as home educators videos, we don't even spend that much time at home. I might just start saying we life educate, because as Krishnamurti said, the whole movement of life is learning. Okay, point number 4. It can cost as little or as much as you want. When people ask how much does home education cost, it's sort of a how long is a piece of string situation. There is the opportunity, if it is your wish, to go all out on expenses with home education. Expensive curriculums, private tutors, paid lessons in person or online, clubs, paid workshops, museum trips, theme park trips, all the resources, papers, pens, printers, laminators, reference books, like anything your mind can imagine you could include in your home education life. I once heard another home ed mum refer to home education as poor man's private education, which I sort of took to mean it can be as good as private education, I think probably better, but that you can get it for a lot cheaper than a private school would cost you, which in private education terms is still a lot of money. It's easy to get carried away with all the lovely things. However, I also believe that home education can be done on a very low budget. Your children could receive an amazing education with none of those things that I've just listed if they have the opportunity of going out to a local woodland, a beach, a park, a back garden, a library, all for free. Although I will say, watch out for those parking costs, because they do add up, I can tell you. But there are many places and resources that are essentially free. If you train yourself to begin to look out for all the learning opportunities that are taking place there, you will see them in abundance in just everyday life, everyday interactions. And again, I've mentioned the Heifer Facebook group before. There are some amazing guides on there that explain what learning is taking place by seemingly mundane everyday things that are happening. If you have an internet provider, you don't need to get all the reference books going, although I do love a book, I do, it's true. But when you read the Elective Home Education Guidance found on the government website, which you should read, and when it says, parents who choose to educate a child in these ways rather than sending the child to school full-time take on financial responsibility for the cost of doing so, don't let that put you off. Because it says this includes the cost of any external assistance, use such as tutors, parent groups, or part-time alternative provision, that does not mean that you have to do those things. It just means that if you choose to, then you are responsible for the cost of that. And finally, I like this one, number 5. If you stuck around till the end of the video, then I really like this last one, something that I didn't know. If somewhere offers school trips, they usually offer home education trips as well. Let me explain. Basically, you might remember from your own schooling, if you went to school, taking field trips, going to museums, doing workshops, all those things that are offered as school trips can be requested as home education class trips. And actually nowadays, I think most places that do that, you'll find somewhere on their website how to book a home education trip. So an example, or a couple of examples, we've done not too long ago. We have done home education workshops at Wagamama and Pizza Express in the UK, which were really fun, and they are originally, designed for small school class group, but they got a chance to go along and learn about making, well, pizzas and noodles and juices at Wagamama's, and it's really hands-on, and the people doing it usually give a bit of background to the food and the culture as well. And when we went on the Pizza Express workshop, all the parents got a free coffee, which was particularly good. And most museums who offer school trips also offer the same trips or workshops for home education children. There's a couple I'm really keen to try out actually. The Postal Museum in London do two home ed days a year, I think, where you can go along, and that's supposed to be really fun, and I'd love to go back. We went to the Brooklands Museum in Surrey just as a family, and I have seen that on their website. They do home ed workshops as well, so I'd love to go back and do that. Plus, not just museums and all that jazz, but most theme parks, or a lot of theme parks also that offer school trips, also offer trips with big discounts for home educated children. So a couple that spring to mind in the south of England are Paultons Park and Legoland. Both you can arrange. Paultons Park, you can get a group of people together and arrange a group visit, and Legoland do home ed days, I think, where you just go on their website and sign up and buy tickets that way. All you need to be able to do most of the time, or for some of them, is get a group of people together, and it'll be varying group sizes, and the way that you're going to do that is again through Facebook. And I've seen it so many times, someone will pop on and say, for example, I'm going to do a group visit to Paultons Park, is anyone else interested? And more often than not, you will get a lot of positive replies of people who would also love to do that trip. So those are 5 things that I thought everyone would like to know about home education in the UK. They're not going to be news to you if you're already home educating properly, but if you're thinking about it and you wanted a little bit of insight in how it all works, then that was maybe the list for you. I might do a part 2 because I've got a few more. But actually what would be great is if you've got any things that you didn't know about home ed in the UK before you started, if you leave them in the comments, then other people can see even more things that I've missed. That would be really cool. And I hope you are doing well.